Welcome back, everyone, to Lesson by Lesson, A Course in Miracles. Today, we're going to be exploring Lesson 82, I Am Entitled to Miracles.
Ooh, I like this
Yeah,
one.
this one is good. And it really dives deep into, that idea of inherent worth and how, just recognizing that can really shift our whole perspective.
Yeah, and what I think is so fascinating about this lesson is how it really encourages us to view ourselves and our potential. And it builds on, the foundation of some of those previous lessons, particularly 63, which highlights that connection between forgiveness and inner peace, and 64, which talks about the importance of, recognizing our unique function in the world.
Okay, so before we dive into the specifics of Lesson 82, can you give us a quick recap of those previous lessons and how they tie in?
Absolutely. So lesson 63 reminds us that the light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness.
Hmm.
And so it's that idea that when we forgive, we release that heavy weight of resentment and anger. And through that act of letting go, we can experience a profound sense of peace.
Yeah, it's like taking off a heavy backpack you've been carrying around for way too long.
Yeah,
Like suddenly you just feel lighter and freer.
exactly. And that feeling of lightness is essential for us to start to recognize our inherent worth, which is, the central message of lesson 82.
Hmm.
And then we have lesson 64, which tells us, let me not forget my function. And, it kind of challenges us to consider our purpose in a deeper sense. Not just in terms of our job or our role in society, but, our unique contribution to the world.
So it's not about what we do for a living, but more about how we show up in the world and the impact we have on others.
Precisely. It suggests that each of us has a special gift to offer, a way of expressing love and serving others that's uniquely our own. And when we kind of combine that idea of unique function with, the peace that comes from forgiveness, we start to see a clearer picture of our inherent worth.
I'm starting to see how all of these ideas connect. So then Lesson 82 takes those concepts of forgiveness and peace and function and says, hey, you're inherently worthy regardless of your achievements or what other people think.
Exactly. It's a very powerful message. And it challenges the way we often, view ourselves because we tend to base our worth on those external factors, our job titles, our relationships, our possessions. But lesson 82 is saying, hey, your worth is not contingent on any of those things.
It's like saying, your value doesn't come from the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's something much deeper and more fundamental.
Right. Lesson 82 reminds us that our worth is intrinsic, meaning it's an inseparable part of who we are. And it's not something that we earn or achieve. It's something we already possess, simply by existing.
I'm already feeling the sense of relief just hearing that because it takes so much pressure off. We put so much energy into trying to prove ourselves or gain approval from others.
Absolutely. And that's what lesson 82 invites us to release. It encourages us to let go of that need for external validation and recognize the inherent worth that's already within us.
But how do we actually do that? It's one thing to intellectually understand it, but how do we make it a lived reality?
Well, that's where the light metaphor comes in. Remember how lesson 63 talks about the light of the world that brings peace through forgiveness? So in A Course in Miracles, that light represents our true divine nature. It's like that spark of goodness that connects us to something much bigger than ourselves.
So when we forgive, we're not just letting go of anger, but we're also catching a glimpse of that inner light, both in ourselves and in others.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. And as we start to see that light more clearly, we begin to recognize our inherent worth. It's like realizing we are all connected to this source of love and goodness, and therefore we are all inherently worthy of love and respect.
This reminds me of that quote from Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's like we're afraid to embrace our own light because we don't realize its true source.
That's a powerful connection. And it highlights, that challenge that lesson 82 kind of presents because it's asking us to step into that power, to embrace our inherent worth, even if it feels scary or unfamiliar.
So how does all of this tie back to our unique function that we were talking about earlier?
Well, when we recognize our inherent worth, we're no longer driven by that need to prove ourselves or seek approval from others. And so then we're free to focus on what truly matters, which is, expressing our unique gifts and fulfilling our purpose in the world.
It's like when you know you're valuable just as you are, you don't need to chase that external validation. You can just be yourself and share your gifts freely.
Exactly. And that freedom allows us to tap into our true potential and make a positive impact on the world. It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset where we're constantly trying to prove our worth to an abundance mindset where we recognize that we already have everything we need within us.
So lesson 82 is basically saying you are enough. You are worthy. Now go out there and shine your light.
That's a beautiful summary. And it leads us to a practical exercise that can help us integrate this lesson into our daily lives. Would you like to hear it?
Absolutely. I'm all ears.
Okay, so find a quiet space where you can just relax and be undisturbed for a few minutes. Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and bring to mind a time when you felt unworthy or inadequate.
Okay, I'm picturing a specific situation right now.
Now, instead of focusing on the negative feelings associated with that memory, shift your attention to 3 qualities or strengths that you possess. It could be anything: your kindness, your creativity, your sense of humor, your resilience.
I'm starting to feel a shift in my energy already. Just focusing on those positive qualities feels good.
That's the power of recognizing your inherent worth. Now, as you hold those qualities in your mind, repeat the affirmation: I am worthy of love and joy simply because I exist. Say it slowly with conviction, allowing the words to sink in.
I am worthy of love and joy simply because I exist.
Wow, that feels powerful. I can feel a sense of warmth spreading through my body.
That warmth is the recognition of your true self, the part of you that's connected to something much greater than your ego or your perceived flaws.
I'm starting to see how this simple exercise can be a real game changer. Just taking a few minutes to acknowledge our inherent worth can shift our entire perspective.
Exactly. And it's a practice that we can return to again and again, especially when we're feeling insecure or doubtful. It reminds us that our worth is not dependent on external circumstances or opinions.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. I'm feeling inspired to continue exploring this idea of inherent worth and see how it can transform my life. It's a journey that unfolds in layers. And the more we practice recognizing our inherent worth, the more we experience its transformative power in all areas of our lives.
I'm curious, what are some other ways that this understanding of inherent worth shows up? Like in our relationships, our work, our creativity.
That's a great question, and one that we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how recognizing our inherent worth empowers us to show up more authentically in our relationships, pursue our passions with confidence, and contribute to the world in meaningful ways. It really is. When we understand our inherent worth, it's like this ripple effect that touches every aspect of our lives.
You mentioned relationships, work, and creativity. Let's start with relationships. How does recognizing our worth change the way we interact with others?
Well, when we are secure in our own worth, we don't need to seek that validation, from our partners, our friends, our family. We can just show up authentically, without the fear of rejection or judgment.
So instead of trying to please others or mold ourselves into what we think they want, we can just be ourselves, flaws and all.
Exactly. And that kind of authenticity is so incredibly attractive and magnetic. It allows us to form deeper, more meaningful connections because we're not hiding behind a mask or pretending to be someone we're not.
It's like we're giving other people permission to be themselves as well by being authentically ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. It creates the space of safety and acceptance where both people can, be vulnerable and real.
And that vulnerability can lead to a much deeper level of intimacy and connection, right?
Absolutely. When we're not afraid to show our true selves, we open the door for, genuine love and intimacy to flow.
Yeah, this makes me think about all those times I've held back in relationships, afraid to express my true feelings or needs. I can see now how that was coming from a place of insecurity, that fear of not being worthy of love.
Yeah, it's a common pattern. We often doubt our own worthiness and then project that, onto others. But when we recognize our inherent value, we can approach relationships from a place of, confidence and self-respect.
So instead of asking, do they like me, we can ask, do I like them?
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering because it allows us to choose, relationships that are aligned with our values and that support our growth and well-being.
Okay, let's move on to work. How does this understanding of inherent worth impact our career choices and our overall work experience?
Well, when we recognize our worth, we're less likely to settle for jobs that, drain our energy or make us feel unfulfilled. We're more inclined to pursue work that aligns with our passions and allows us to express our unique gifts.
So instead of just chasing a paycheck or trying to impress others with, a fancy title, we're more likely to follow our heart and do work that feels meaningful.
Precisely. And that sense of meaning and purpose can make all the difference in our work experience. It's no longer just about earning a living. It's about contributing to something larger than ourselves and, making a positive impact on the world.
I'm imagining someone who's been stuck in a soul-crushing job for years, feeling trapped and uninspired. Hearing this message of inherent worth could be a real wake-up call. you know, like a reminder that they deserve to do work that lights them up.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our time and energy are precious, and we don't have to waste them on work that doesn't bring us joy or fulfillment.
This makes me think about that concept of function that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
If we believe we're worthy, we're more likely to embrace our unique function and find ways to express it through our work right.
That's a beautiful connection.
Yeah.
Our function is about sharing our gifts with the world. And when we know we're worthy, we're more likely to, step into that role with confidence and enthusiasm.
So it's not just about finding a job that pays the bills. It's about like finding a way to make a meaningful contribution through our work, whatever that may be.
Exactly. And when we approach work from this perspective, it becomes less about, what I do and more about who I am and how I can serve.
Okay, you mentioned creativity as well. How does recognizing our worth influence our creative expression?
When we believe in our worth, we give ourselves permission to explore, our creative potential without fear of judgment or criticism. We're more likely to try new things, to experiment, and to express ourselves authentically.
So instead of censoring ourselves or comparing our work to others, we can just create from a place of joy and freedom.
Exactly. We're no longer worried about being perfect or pleasing others. We're simply focused on expressing our unique vision and sharing our gifts with the world.
I can see how this applies to like all forms of creativity, whether it's painting, writing, music, dance, or even just like coming up with creative solutions to everyday problems.
Yeah, it's about tapping into that inner spark of inspiration and allowing it to flow freely without judgment or self-doubt.
This reminds me of that famous quote, comparison is the thief of joy. When we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, we diminish our own worth and stifle our creative expression.
That's so true. When we recognize our inherent worth, we realize that there's no need for comparison. We are all unique expressions of the divine, and our creativity is a gift to be celebrated, not compared.
So lesson 82 is not just about, feeling good about ourselves. It's about unlocking our full potential in all areas of our lives. It's about showing up authentically in our relationships, doing work that feels meaningful, and expressing our creativity with joy and freedom.
Exactly. It's a transformative message that empowers us to live a more fulfilling and purposeful life.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I'm already feeling a shift in my own perspective just by exploring these ideas.
Yeah, that's the power of Force and Miracles. It offers like a new way of seeing ourselves in the world, a way that is based on love, forgiveness, and, the recognition of our inherent worth.
I'm curious, is there anything else you'd like to share about Lesson 82 before we wrap up? Any final nuggets of wisdom for our listeners?
Hmm. I think the most important takeaway from Lesson 82 is that our worth is not something we need to earn or prove. It's something we already possess, simply by virtue of existing.
It's like we've been given this incredible gift, but we often forget to open it or we don't believe we deserve it.
Exactly. But the truth is, we are all worthy of love, joy, and abundance. And when we finally embrace that truth, our lives can truly begin to transform.
This has been an incredible deep dive into Lesson 82. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but it's given me a lot to think about and put into practice.
I agree. It's a lesson that we can keep revisiting and unpacking, throughout our lives. The more we understand our inherent worth, the more we can create a life that is aligned with our true nature and purpose.
So for our listener who, may be struggling with this idea, how would you suggest they start to embrace their inherent worth? I mean, it's a big concept to shift, especially if you've been conditioned to believe otherwise.
You're absolutely right. It is a journey, not just like a switch you flip. But,
Yeah.
even small steps can make a big difference. Remember the exercise we talked about earlier, taking some time to reflect on those positive qualities and repeat that affirmation. I am worthy of love and joy simply because I exist. It's a powerful way to reprogram your thinking and start to believe in your own worth.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed in the garden of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have to tend to it, water it, and give it
Yeah.
sunlight. Eventually it will blossom.
Ooh, that's a beautiful analogy. And just like gardening, it takes patience and consistency. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight. Just keep practicing, keep affirming your worth and trust that the change is happening within you.
And maybe surround yourself with people who see and appreciate your worth, too. Because sometimes it's easier to believe it when we hear it reflected back to us.
That's such an important point. Yeah. The company we keep has a profound impact on our self-perception. So surround yourself with people who uplift you, encourage you, and see the best in you. And just as importantly, distance yourself from, those who constantly criticize you or put you down.
Yeah, it's like choosing to nourish yourself with, healthy food instead of junk food. Feed your mind and soul with positive messages and, loving connections.
Exactly. And remember, you have the power to choose. You get to decide. You know who you let into your life and whose opinions you value. So prioritize those relationships that make you feel good about yourself and, support your growth.
This has been such a powerful deep dive into Lesson 82. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but it's given me a lot to think about and put into practice.
I agree. It's a lesson that we can keep revisiting and unpacking, throughout our lives. And the more we understand our inherent worth, the more we can create a life that is aligned with our true nature and purpose.
So to wrap up, what's one final thought you'd like to leave our listener with?
I would encourage them to just remember this. Your worth is not determined by, your accomplishments, your possessions, or the opinions of others. It's an intrinsic part of who you are. It's a gift that was given to you at birth. Embrace it, celebrate it, and let it guide you on your journey.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you tomorrow.